Mars is retrograde from December 6th, 2024 through February 23rd, 2025, moving from fire sign Leo back into water sign Cancer.
Mars retrograde can be a little bit tricky. It's the planet of self-assertion and decision-making. It basically represents how we deal with pressure and how we go after what we want in life. So when the planet goes retrograde, that function can seem to backfire, leading to tension or stress.
Mars is the archetypal warrior inside the psyche, and the warrior's purpose is using force deliberately to protect and to conquer in positive ways that support things like survival and safety and personal convictions. It's connected to how we express our strength and defend our ego and our choices. So Mars will station retrograde at 6 degrees Leo. That's the sign of pride and leadership, a symbol of royalty, and the lion, the king of the jungle. This is one stress point, which is exact on Friday, December 6th, but its impact will span from about December 5th through the 8th. Mars, which is usually moving at a rate of about 46 to 47 arc minutes per day, has slowed down throughout the months of November and into December, and then appears to come to a complete halt for these 4 days as it changes direction.
There will be some pressure bearing down around December 5th through the 8th as Mars stations retrograde in Leo. Pride or honor may seem under attack in some way, and people are more reactive about getting what they want.
When distorted, Mars stationing retrograde can elicit misdirected, all-encompassing anger. The shadow side of Mars in Leo is self-centered resentment, and with a retrograde, that anger can turn inward towards things like depression, panic, and anxiety. So it's important to keep this retrograde in mind during early December. Pay attention if something stalls out. It's a signal that you probably need to rechannel your efforts in some way or re-strategize your attack. Or maybe it'll bring up something that needs reflection so that you can truly conquer it, something robbing you of Leo's positive warmth. So here's a list of dates when the moon makes aspects to Mars during December, while Mars is moving slow. These dates will likely fan the flames of Mars and Leo. They're the days to be constructive and mindful with that warrior energy, either stepping up if you need to defend your boundaries in a positive way, or toning it down and taking a breath if you're feeling the fury. With Mars, we always need to direct action in ways that are consistent with our core values. Now let's get back into January 2025. Mars will back up into a second opposition with Pluto, now in Aquarius, overnight January 2nd to the 3rd. Mars has already been here in this opposition, back when Mars was in Cancer and Pluto was in Capricorn. Back then, Mercury, Mars, and Neptune were all in a grand water trine, and the planets were forming a kite pattern. This spanned from October 28th through November 3rd. This is a really dynamic aspect in astrology, and because the Mars-Pluto opposition was at its core, this aspect had to do with exerting power and control. So let's just pause to look at the bigger picture here. This particular Mars retrograde story actually began earlier in the autumn when Mars reached 17 degrees Cancer on October 7th. This is when Mars entered its shadow, the area of the zodiac that it's backtracking through in January and February. Now, Mars is about to repeat these same aspects again that it made back in October. So just to glance back real quick, on October 13th, Mars in Cancer squared Chiron for the first time. This may have triggered some vulnerability back then and an agitation to get moving. Mars and Chiron in the square aspect indicates a surge of self-protection in some way and a tendency for an adrenaline-charged or hasty response. Maybe a wound about safety and loyalty came up, and it's often connected to our desire to take independent action for personal well-being. Then Mars moved on to trine Neptune on October 28th. In a trine, the planets are leaning into each other. Neptune tends to create these impressionable waves colored by wishful thinking and idealism and fantasy and sometimes deception. So Neptune was flowing without impediment into Mars. This was during that kite pattern that impacted us from October 28th through November 3rd, while the first Mars-Pluto opposition occurred. Now Mars retrogrades back into Cancer on January 6th, 2025, and it returns to this same trine that happened. It returns to the water trine to Neptune on January 12th. The warrior planet in Cancer is much more alert to threats to safety, to any encroachment on privacy and the home. It's fighting for security. It's fighting for safety in water sign Cancer. And on January 12th, that may lower boundaries and weaken resistance. It's a really sensitive and moody day.
By mid-January, we'll be about halfway through the 80-day Mars retrograde. And remember, this time is excellent for putting energy into things that lost momentum in the past or things that we neglected in the past. It's also great for inner directed work and gaining strength behind the scenes.
Mars continues backing up to square Chiron for the second time on February 3rd, 2025, and again that sensitive point is triggered. We're coming toward the end of the retrograde now. Mars is beginning to slow down in its orbit. The big turning point will be February 23rd, although that spans from February 22nd through the 25th as Mars slows down and stations direct. While it does this, it's in another water trine, this time to Mercury and Pisces. So here, in late February 2025, Mars has hopefully revamped a thing or two, re-strategized something. It starts moving direct in Cancer, forming its third and final aspects to these same planets. Now, it'll take a little while to pick up speed, and while it does so, it's still in those sensitive, private waters of Cancer. This part of the timeline has Mars taking subtle baby steps towards a new approach. The spring season 2025 will really bring the resolution and maybe a chance to overcome or to tackle something that has been blocking us. Mars squares Chiron a third and final time on March 26th, and then through April and the beginning of May, we're coming to the end of this retrograde cycle. This is Mars cleaning up loose ends, moving in direct motion through the late degrees of Cancer. And on April 18th, Mars re-enters fire sign Leo. The atmosphere starts heating up. April 19th, Mars in Leo trines Neptune, which is newly in fire sign Aries, the sign that Mars rules. The final aspects occur on April 26th when Mars in Leo forms its third opposition to Pluto. And then lastly, Mars returns to 6 degrees Leo on May 2nd, leaving its shadow and moving on to a new battlefield, a new place to play. We'll really feel all this firepower through May 3rd, 2025, as the moon transits through Leo and forms a conjunction with Mars and a trine to Venus and Neptune.
The exciting thing about this influx of fire energy in April and May 2025 is that it can get us motivated for purposeful, decisive, and independent action. Fire drives the energy up and out. So we can use this Mars retrograde during the winter months to really prepare for that surge of fire coming at us in the spring of 2025.
But the warnings involve too much heat when fire feeds the ego. When feeling those darker faces of Aries Leo energy, there's this flare-up possible with anger or overblown bravado. It's too brash, too headstrong, too rushed, too self-centered, or too panicked, too reactive to make sound choices. Keep those distortions in mind while we navigate these Mars retrograde skies. So I'm going to leave it there for now. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more of my forecast. And please like the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And to book a natal chart reading, visit my website, roottoriseremedies.com.